We listen, we don't get scared.
What would you do if you got a DoorDash order to a house that looked completely abandoned?
I've put together some of the strangest reports I could find. These stories aren't the kind that you'll easily forget, and I'm definitely going to keep the lights on tonight.
This next story takes place in Aurora, Colorado. There was a young girl named Stacy. And Stacy and her best friend, they loved to go to the nightclubs every weekend. Well, there was this new nightclub that had just opened in town, and they were excited to go. So her and her best friend and a couple of their other friends decide they're going to go and check it out. So they go there and they get to the club and they do their normal routine of ordering drinks, sitting down for a little bit and chatting. And they decide they were going to go out on the dance floor and start dancing. Well, they see this group of guys out on the dance floor and they interact with them and start dancing with them. Well, Stacy starts dancing with one of the guys. He's, she could tell that he's younger than her and that she's shorter, about 5'4". And so they're dancing, having a good time. And when she's dancing, she turns, looks over at her friend, who's been her best friend for several years, and she sees that she is freakishly tall now, over like 6 foot. And she's standing higher than the guy she's dancing with when normally she was about his height. So Stacy turns again and she looks back at this guy. And then when she turns to do a second look, her and the guy, look over at her best friend. And they see that she now looks like a 6 foot tall, reptile looking humanoid type creature. And her and this, boy she's dancing with, they're both terrified and freaked out by what they are seeing. So they just run out of the nightclub together. And Stacy goes did you see that? Did you see what I seen? And he said, yeah, and he explains exactly what she had seen. Now she thinks, I'm losing it. That's my best friend. I've known her for years. She's not a reptilian creature thing. So she goes back in the nightclub and she finds her friend. Except her friend is now back to normal and looks like her friend. And so she tells her friend, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go home. And so she leaves. And she tries avoiding this friend for a little while because she doesn't know how to confront her friend about what had happened. And she thinks that she'll think that she's crazy. So she decides finally to call up her friend and talk to her about it. And she calls her up and says, hey, do you want to meet at the mall? I'll talk to you about why I haven't been around lately. So they go to the mall and Stacy sits down with her friend and she says, this craziest thing happened to me at the nightclub. I looked at you and you shapeshift. And I don't know what happened, but for a second you look like this reptilian type humanoid. And her friend was like, no, that doesn't seem weird, but could you see me? Did I what could you see? And explain to me what happened and what were you doing when this happened? And she was questioning Stacy about all these things, and she was more concerned about was she seen and what did Stacy think about her, and did Stacy think that she was something else? And she was really freaked out by the fact that Stacy had seen her shapeshift. And so Stacy said after that meeting her friend was kind of very different and weird after that. And then one day her and her family just moved away and she never talked to that friend again. There's a place in Denver, Colorado that's known as Riverdale Road, and it is probably one of the most haunted roads in America. It's known from everything from demons to skinwalkers to ghosts. This is one road I would not want to drive alone at night. Now, this story comes from a young man named Kevin who lived in Denver for a few years. He said one night he just was bored and he decided he was just going to drive around town. So he gets in his car and he doesn't really have a particular destination. He just figured, he would let the night take him where he would drive to. So as he's driving, he just would get this feeling I should turn this way, I should take this exit, I should head in this direction. And it leads him to Riverdale Road. So as he's driving down Riverdale, he gets to this part where there is train tracks. And he just starts getting this weird, creepy feeling like something is watching him. And part of him wants to find the nearest road he can turn off onto and get off this road. But something is intriguing to him and makes him want to stay on this road. So as he's driving, all of a sudden, his radio turns on by itself. And the song Imagine Dragons, Demons starts playing by itself. And he turns the radio off, but the radio continues to play. And so he starts, kind of banging on the, like, what's going on with what's happening with the CD player. And finally, it turns off. So he thinks, okay, maybe there's some kind of electrical problems or something. But he keeps on driving. Well, all of a sudden, he starts to get that feeling once again, like he's being watched. And he feels like there's someone sitting in the back seat. When he turns around and looks, he can see two red eyes staring at him from the back seat. He can't see a body, he can't see a person. It's just completely dark. And there's two red eyes staring at him. So Kevin is just kind of, at this point, freaked out and doesn't know what to do. And he keeps looking back and the eyes are still there. So he starts talking to these eyes and he says, look, I don't know who you are or what you want from me. I'm sorry I came on this road. I'll get off if you want. And he looks back again and boom, the eyes are gone. There's no one back there. So Kevin, is like, it's time to get off this road. But as he kept driving, he would turn off onto a street and he would find himself back on Riverdale Road. And no matter how many times he turned or where he exited, he couldn't get off this road. So he pulls over and he gets on his cell phone and he starts trying to call his friend to see, if he could come meet him there and help him figure out how to get off this road. But his phone isn't working. And he's getting no service, which he thinks is weird because he, most places in Denver, he gets service and he never had an issue with his phone. So as he's sitting there in his phone, he all of a sudden sees a shadow out of the corner of his eye. And a man walks up to the side of his car. And he can't see his face. He can't see the upper part of him because he's, standing up over the car. But the man bends down and he looks into the window. And he can see the man has red eyes. And this just pale face. And the man touches the window. And all of a sudden, he could see smoke coming from this guy's hand as he touches the window. And so Kevin just slams on the gas and just starts, speeding off down the road. And he remembers this prayer that his mom taught him when he was younger. And he starts saying this prayer over and over again. And finally he sees a road he can turn onto. And he turns off onto this road. And he manages to get off of Riverdale Road. And he said he will never drive on that road or near that road.
I'm definitely going to have trouble sleeping after that. The thought of your best friend suddenly growing an inch taller and turning into some kind of lizard in the middle of a dance floor is kind of weird. It's that moments at the mall that gets me though. When she starts asking all of those specific questions about what Stacy saw and how much she noticed. Looks like she's trying to see if her cover is blown or something. I'd be finding a new best friend immediately. The way she finally packed up and left the town with her whole family once that meeting ended is a total final confirmation.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when my uncle bumped into this ghost child and disappeared. Since 2009 till date, we don't know what happened to him. So y'all, there was a funeral at my dad's place, right? At my dad's grandmother's place, sorry. And we travel using the same road with this particular uncle of mine because we all stayed in the same area, right? If you listen to my story times and you were an OG, you know that every single time me and my dad used to go visit his villages in Limpopo, we always traveled at night. Whether it be me and him or my siblings or whoever, we always traveled at night. So at this point, when we are passing a certain place, I think it was around 11 p.m. at night. So we are passing, we are driving. And as we are driving, my dad is not driving that fast because you can't drive at high speeds at night, And so as we are approaching this other curve, we see this girl standing. She's wearing pink tights and a blue top. I remember very well. She's wearing pink tights, a blue top, and she's standing there and she looks so scared. She's busy going like this, like she's hiking. And I look at that girl and I feel so bad for her. And I'm just like, I'm looking at my dad thinking he's gonna stop, because I was in the front seat, by the way, because my other siblings would sleep on the road and I wouldn't sleep on the road, because me and my dad would be talking and listening to music sometimes. So I'm sitting in the front seat, I'm looking at my dad like he's gonna help the girl. My dad acted like he did not see her. He just looked straight forward and continued moving. So I look at my dad like some horrible creature, and I'm like, hey bro, aren't you gonna help the girl? He's like, now why would a child at 11 p.m. decide to stand there? And he was like, if that is a missing child, God will help somebody. God will put it in somebody else's heart to save them. He is not the Messiah. He's not doing it. And he passed, y'all. So my uncle now, on the other hand, he said that he's going to work that particular day, because on Saturday I think there was a ceremony or something. He said that he's going to work, so after work he's going to be traveling to Limpopo in the AMs. And remember, in the AM it's still dark, you know what I mean? Around 2 a.m 3 a.m it's still dark. So that's when he said he's going to travel. Cool, we get to Limpopo, it's chilled, it's vibes, whatever. The following day comes, it's daylight. My uncle is nowhere to be seen. I don't think anything of it. I think maybe he's just gonna come later on. The ceremony starts, the ceremony ends. The sun is going down. This man has not come yet. He has not arrived. So now, obviously, like, there's just some sort of panic in my heart, Felt like something was wrong. I go to my grandma. I tell this lady, and I say, mind you guys, this is not my dad's mom, but that's a story for another day. I tell this lady, like, hi, where is Uncle so-and-so coming, because we've been waiting for him, whatever. And she tells me to go play. But then I can hear, man, that there's a certain tension in this room. They're busy talking, and my dad comes in and he's like, I just called his workplace. They say he's off today, like he did not come to work. Where could this man be? So as they're panicking there, they get a phone call. You know me, Mus, I'm nosy. I stand at the door. They get a phone call and they put it on loudspeaker. It's a police officer. The police officer is like, hi, am I speaking to so-and-so and so? And that was my dad. So in case of emergency, this person, my uncle put my dad's number to, so they call him. Do you understand? Hopefully you understand. So they're like, hi, is this so-and-so? My dad's like, yes. They're like, listen, we found so-and-so's car, my uncle's car, at that same bend where we saw the girl. They found the car there. And there is no signs of robbery, because his phone is still there, his wallet, everything, even his bag, but he's not there. So now they're kind of getting worried and they decide to go to the scene, right? And I get in the front seats because that's my dad's car number one. Hey, I used to be a brat growing up. That's my dad's car number one and I want to go see, And they tried to tell me to get out and I started crying. And I know one thing about my dad, when you start crying shame, he can never say no to your tears. So I start crying. He's like, I leave the child. So I get in the front seat and then the adults are in the back seat. They start driving. When they get to the place, for sure, the police are there. It's not that many police officers. And they're like, it seems like this person might have, I don't know, like they can't explain. Because the car is on the one side of the road. And then my uncle's footsteps, like when like on the other side, like maybe near the bend, that's where my uncle's footsteps are. And then after that, there's grass. So they don't know where he went. They went into the bushes. They tried to look, whatever, nothing. Fine, they filed a missing persons report and the police guys searched, They searched and he was never found. His car was found, everything was found, but he never found. So obviously, naturally, they go consult a traditional healer. And how I know what the traditional healer said was because my dad was telling my mother the story and I heard, you know what I mean? So he's telling my mom, and it's like, hey, we went to this other traditional healer and apparently Uncle so-and-so was taken by this child. This child is a child that died, right? And they're using that child spirit to lure people. And apparently wherever Uncle so-and-so is, he's basically gone, like dead. They killed him and they are using his spirit to do like their own things. And basically they have blinded him spiritually so that he can't find his path back home. Like we are never going to see him in dreams that show us where this person is or who took him. Basically what the traditional healer explained was, y'all are never going to find him. And if you go to somebody else, they are going to do nothing but waste your time. But you guys can keep trying. You can go to a second person and ask for a second opinion, but that's what she sees. And when I tell you that traditional healer did not lie, guys, because till date, we don't know what happened to my uncle. Also, Also, they did get like a second opinion from somebody, and obviously that person was like, yeah, we need to work or on the car, you know, where his last scent was, in the seat where he was driving. That's where they need to dial the things. And that traditional healer came, dial the things. Did anything happen? No. Did we dream about my uncle? No. We never found him till date.
The girl in the pink thighs and the blue top stands so much. Most people would not think twice after seeing a child on the side of a road, but at 11 p.m. it feels kind of suspicious. This dad was smart to keep his eyes ahead and keep moving. It is awful that her uncle stopped and left everything behind. The fact that they found his phone and wallet inside the vehicle is a sign. He was taken in a split second. He didn't even have a chance to grab his things before he was gone for good. The idea of him being lost for over a decade is low-key heavy.
My friend can teleport and has proven it to me multiple times. I thought I've heard it all. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is the series where I share allegedly true, creepy, crazy, most unbelievable things that have ever happened to somebody, okay? And so, like I said, I thought I've heard it all. So when I get this email and this lady says that her boyfriend can teleport, I'm like, So I read her email and what? So first of all, she said her boyfriend is 50 years old. They've been dating for 3 years. He's incredibly sweet. He's incredibly kind. And he's also huge. And this is important later. He's 6'5", about 260 pounds. Still dating. She's like, should I be scared? So here are the facts of the case. Still with him, okay? And she's like, should I be scared? But I'm gonna give you the facts of the case. So she says that they met like 3.5 years ago. She had just gotten out of a long-term relationship where she broke up with her fiance. And like I said, this guy was super nice. They started dating and she needed a place because she was moving out of her fiance's old place. And so he's like, well, why don't you stay with me for a little bit while you're getting on your feet? And she's like, perfect. It's a temporary setup and this man is like a safe space to her. So one day she's unpacking all of her stuff in his house. He's at work. It's like 6 p.m. And the way that their apartment is set up is important to know. So they live on the second floor and she said that in order to get into the apartment, you walk up a flight of stairs that enters into the living room. There's no other way to get in and out of this place. So living room, then kitchen, then 3 bedrooms. A 1-floor apartment on the second floor of this building, okay? There's no way to get anywhere in the apartment without coming through that living room door. So she's unpacking stuff. She's got the TV on. She texts him to say that she misses him and she hopes he'll be home soon. And he texts her, I miss you too. I can be home whenever. And she's like, oh, haha, like, please hurry home. And he's like, no, one thing that you don't know about me is I can appear as you wish. She's flirting back. You know, she's like, oh, if you can appear as I wish, then I wish that you're here now. Like, please come in. And he says, okay, go open any window and I'll be there shortly. And she's like, okay, so she goes to the farthest bedroom, opens a window a little bit and goes back in the living room. A minute later, he comes walking out of that bedroom and she's like, I don't know how he got in because it's on the second floor. She's like, what, did you just have a ladder outside or something? And he's like, no, I wasn't kidding about I can come and go as I please. She brushes past him. She goes in the bedroom, looks out the window for a ladder or something. There's no ladder. There's nowhere in the apartment that he could have put a ladder. So she's looking at him and she's like, no, really, how'd you do that? And he's like, I'm not kidding. Like, I can come and go as I please. Presses him for answers, but he is persistent in the assumption that he can just come and go as he pleases and he will not give her any other explanation. So she finally just laughs it off, I guess. She's like, you know what, I'm just gonna let him have this prank, okay? A couple months go by, she's still living there. One night she's home alone. She's been at home alone for hours. He's been at work. She said she's sitting in the living room and all of a sudden he just walks out from the kitchen. She said she had been in the living room the entire time. He would have had to come in through the living room in order to get into the kitchen. So she had no idea. She freaked out completely. She's like, when did you get home? I didn't even see you come home. How would I have not noticed you? And he says, I told you that I can do this. Like, you're really freaking me out. I really need to know what is going on with you. And he says, okay, I just won't do it again in front of you. She was very shaken by it, but he did not offer any other explanation besides, I can do this at will. Fast forward a little bit. She has moved out into her own place, okay? She is at home one day. She's scrolling social media. She's not with him. And she sees that he has posted on his social media photos and videos of him in a different country. She didn't want me to say where because she was worried about him seeing this. So she texts him and she's like, who are you trying to fool that you're in this other country? Because she knew that he was not in another country. She knew that he had never been to this other country before. And he texted her and he just laughed it off. This happens again. And now he's in a major city in the US. And again, she knew that he was not in this major city, but he's posting photos and videos of himself there. So she texts him again. She's like, why are you posting pictures and videos of yourself in this city when I know you're not there? Like, you're in our city. And he texts her back and he says, don't you remember when I told you that I can go anywhere at any time at will? She's like, okay, well, I think that you're using AI, or I think you're using something to fool people. I don't really think that you're there. And he says, no, I'll prove it to you. And she said, how are you gonna prove it to me? And he says, we'll pick an event and I will go there. That's happening in this city tonight. And she's like, no, come over right now. He's like, I'm not there. I'm in this city. She's like, why is this man lying to me? So she says, okay, go to this store, which she didn't want me to mention, but basically it's a store that they don't have in their city. She's like, go to this store, bring me this back. She kind of did it just to humor him because she knew he wasn't there because she had just seen him that morning. The flight would have been too long for him to get to the city by the time that he was posting these photos. He says, no, when I teleport, I can't bring anything back. And she's like, ha, I got you. And she's like, okay, if you can be anywhere at any time, come to my apartment right now. He says, okay, I'll be there shortly. And this is where it gets creepy, okay? So she says her new apartment is on the 12th floor of this building. And she has a balcony that overlooks the city. There's no fire escape, and the only entrance to this building is the main front door, which she said has an inside lock. So she locks the inside lock, and he tells her, if you want me to come, you have to crack open your balcony door. She's like, why do I have to crack open the balcony door? Because there's no way for him to get in there from outside. So she's like, it's not like he's coming in this way. And he says it's because the pressure from his teleportation will crack the glass. Because again, cannot reiterate this enough, there's no other way into her apartment besides this front door. So she says, okay, I'm gonna humor you because I don't know what's going on. So she cracks open the balcony door, goes to bed. It's like 2 a.m. 7 a.m, she wakes up to a text from him, and it's a video of him in her house. She said he did not have a key, and he was in the same clothes that he was wearing in the photos of him in this other city. The video was sent around 3 a.m, and it's him in her apartment, and the door is locked behind him. It's a brand new white light that she had just put in that day, so she knew the video was taken that night because prior to that she had like a yellow light. The throw blanket was on the couch that she had used prior to going to bed, and in the video he is seen walking to her bedroom. She can see herself. He's whispering to the camera. He's saying, baby, I can't wake you. You asked for this. To the camera while she's sleeping in the background, mind you. He's whispering, I'm sorry I didn't bring the stuff that you asked for. I told you I can't bring things when I teleport, but once I go the legitimate way, I can bring you these things back. Tells her the time that it is where they are and the time that it is where he was supposedly in that city. And as he's saying the time, she turns in the bed and he laughs and he says, stop moving, baby. At this point in her message, she said she's a very light sleeper. She would know if someone was in the room with her, but she did not hear anybody in the room with her that night. In the video, he walks over to her, pats her body, pulls her cover up over her body, and walks out of the room. Meanwhile, he looks at the camera one more time and he says, remember, you asked for this. Laughs and ends the video. She calls him right away. She says, I saw the video. What is going on? Because she knew, because of some of the details in that video, that it had been taken that night. He did not have a key to her place. The place was locked from the inside. There's no way for him to have gotten in. So her mind is blown. And he says, you know, I have some stuff to take care of today, business related, but you can come over to my place. And I'm all done. And so she goes over there. He's back. Everything's normal. She's pressing him for answers because she's clearly freaked out by this. And he just is insistent that he can teleport and that it's very real. And he tells her that if she wants to learn how to do it, she has to raise her vibration. Tells her that she has to be extremely genuine and truthful. She also said that he could do other things, but she didn't go into detail. And she said those are other stories. But she really just sent this because she was like, should I be freaked out? I really want to learn how to do it. It's not enough for me to like leave him. He also told her that he only does it when he needs to because it takes a toll on his energy, and he only does it when he needs to scout a place, whatever that means. Let her know your thoughts.
He shows up in her apartment on the 12th floor while she's fast asleep. He's talking quietly to the camera while she's visible in the background, and that video is really hard to watch. There he's leaning over her and she didn't hear a thing. It seems like he's tracking her, even when he's supposed to be in a different city. He acts like it's no big deal to pop in her home whenever he feels like it. Then he tells her he only does it to scout a place. Scout for what exactly? Makes me wonder what else he's doing when she's not watching.
What would you do if you got a DoorDash order to a house that looked completely abandoned, but when you were standing on the porch, the delivery instructions updated to bring it inside? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about someone who says that they were door dashing late at night and they saw something that they just can't explain. This happened last fall. I used to do DoorDash at night after my regular job. It was easy money and I didn't mind it most of the time. It was a little after 11 and I was trying to do one more order before heading home. I picked up the order from a small fast food place and started driving to the address. The farther out I went, the fewer lights there were. Houses got farther apart and there were hardly any cars. When I pulled up, the house looked empty. There was no lights on, there wasn't a car anywhere that I could see, and the grass was definitely overgrown and the walkway had weeds coming up through the cracks. The whole house looked completely like nobody had lived there for a while. I thought the app had to have been wrong, so I checked the number on the mailbox and then the number by the door. It matched. I sat in my car for a few seconds because I really did not want to get out, but the app still said I was at the right place, so I grabbed the bag and went up to the porch. The front door was almost shut, but not fully. It was just cracked. I checked the delivery instructions again, and it still said, leave at door. So I bent down to set the food beside the mat, and my phone buzzed. The instructions changed. It now said, bring it inside. I just stared at the screen, and then I looked up at the front door, and it was open a little wider than before now. There was no wind, nothing outside was moving. Then I looked up, and the front door was open a little wider than before. There was no wind, there was nothing outside moving. I said, Hello? Nothing answered. Then I got another message through the app. You can come in. I started backing down the porch steps, and that's when I heard movement inside the house. I heard what sounded like bare feet running across old woods somewhere just inside, quick and light at first and then heavier, like whatever it was had started further back in the house and was suddenly coming straight towards the front door. I froze for half a second, and honestly, I should have run then, but I took the delivery photo first because I wanted proof I had actually made it there. I needed that job and I didn't want support acting like I was making stuff up. So I set the bag down, took the picture, and right after that, I heard a voice from inside the house say very quietly, "That's not inside." I grabbed the bag and ran back to my car. I locked the doors and sat there shaking with the food still in my lap. I was trying to decide whether to cancel the order or call support or just leave. Then the app updated by itself. It said, "Handed directly to customer." I had not handed it to anybody. While I was staring at that, I looked back at the house, and the front door was opening wider, slowly, not swinging open, just easing wider, like someone on the other side was pulling it without wanting the hinges to make any noise. I could see further into the house now, but not much. It was dark, and then something moved in the doorway. At first, my brain tried to make it into a person. That only lasted about a second, though, because it was too tall for the space and bent in a way that made it look like it had unfolded out of the dark instead of just stepped forward. One shoulder sat higher than the other, one arm hung lower than it should have, almost down to where the hand should have been brushing its knee. In the face, I could only see the top half at first, because the lower part was still buried in the dark behind the door frame. But what I could see made me feel sick immediately. The eyes were wide, too wide, glassy in a way that caught what little light there was without reflecting it back right. They didn't look dark, they looked pale and flat, like dead eyes in a photograph when the flash hits wrong. Too round, too small, no blink, no shift, just fixed on me. Then it leaned forward a little more, enough for me to see the mouth. It wasn't smiling, it just looked stretched open, already waiting like it had been standing there with its jaw hanging loose the whole time. That's when I started the car and left. I didn't call support until I was back on the main road, and the woman I got sounded half asleep and not interested. She asked if I felt unsafe, and I said yes. Then she put me on hold. And while I was on hold, the customer left a message on the order. It said, "Next time, don't stop at the door." I almost dropped my phone. Next morning, I looked at the delivery photo again because I wanted to convince myself I had just panicked and made it worse in my head. The bag was on the porch where I had put it, but in the dark gap of the doorway, there was something standing there. You couldn't make out the whole face, just enough shape to know it had been watching me the entire time. 2 days later, I drove back in daylight because I wanted to prove to myself it was just some creepy occupied house with some jerk inside. The house looked worse in the daytime, though. One side window was boarded up and the mail was jammed in the slot. The yard was a complete mess. There was trash everywhere. There was a shut-off notice taped to the front door from the power company. I parked across the street and zoomed in with my phone. The shut-off date was from 3 months before. No power for 3 months. I was still staring at it when my phone buzzed. It was DoorDash again, a new order for the same address. I declined it so fast I almost threw my phone. I never did DoorDash after dark again.
That image of the thing in the doorway is what I keep going back to. Something being too tall for the space and having to unfold itself out of the shadow is not right. I'm still thinking about those pale, glassy eyes that didn't reflect the lights the right way. It is a specific kind of creepiness that is so believable. Then you get that message on the app saying not to stop at the door later on. It implies that he wanted to walk right into that darkness. I'd never look at a delivery app the same way following a shift like that.
What would you do if you got turned around hiking after dark and then saw a woman floating between the trees? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about someone who said that they saw a woman in the woods and now they'll never go hiking alone again. I went hiking alone because I'd done that trail a bunch of times before and didn't think much of it. It was one of those longer loop trails just outside of town where people go after work or on weekends. I had a real big flashlight in my backpack, water, snacks, all the things that I needed, and I wasn't being reckless. I just stayed out later than I meant to. By the time I realized I'd taken the wrong split on the trail, the light was already dropping. I still wasn't panicking yet. I knew the trail system well enough that I'd figured I'd just cut back the way I came and get to the parking area before it got fully dark. I had my flashlight and I had my car. I was annoyed more than anything. Then the woods got quiet in the way that they do when you're alone and it's getting late. No voices from other hikers and no dogs and bikes, just my own steps and the beam of my flashlight moving over the path. I had been walking maybe 10 more minutes when I heard the buzzing. Loud and close, off to my left somewhere in the trees. My first thought was bees, that kind of thick, buzzing sound like a disturbed nest. It was strange because it was too late in the day for that to make sense, but that's still what my brain reached for. So I turned and pointed the flashlight toward it, and at first I thought I only caught white fabric. Then I lifted the beam higher and saw her. There was a woman suspended between the trees. Long hair hanging down, thin white nightdress filthy at the hem, and her feet weren't touching anything. That was the first thing my body understood before my mind did. She was a few feet off the ground and just hanging there in the air like something had lifted her and left her. Her eyes were wide open, and I could see the whites all the way around them. Her mouth was hanging open too, and she wasn't blinking, she wasn't moving, and the buzzing was coming from her. I froze. I remember every muscle in my body locking up at once because I kept waiting for my brain to turn it into something else. Cloth caught on branches or somebody playing a prank, a trick of the light, literally anything else. Then her head turned toward me, fast, too fast. And then she smiled. It spread slowly, like she was enjoying how long it was taking for me to understand what I was looking at. I ran. I didn't stay to think. I didn't stay to keep the flashlight on her, and I turned and ran flat out down the trail. Branches hit my arms, my light kept jumping all over the path, and I almost lost my footing twice. Somewhere behind me, I could hear steps tearing through the woods, fast. Closer than they should have been, and that was what made me start screaming. I could hear leaves getting crushed, feet hitting dirt, and something weaving between the trees and keeping pace with me. Every time I risked a glance back, the flashlight beam caught trunks and brush and empty trail, but I never got a clear look again while I was running, which somehow made it worse. I knew something was there, and I just couldn't catch it. I hit the parking lot area so hard I almost slammed into the side of my car. I fumbled my keys, dropped them, picked them back up, got inside, and locked the doors. And for a second, I just sat there gasping with the flashlight still in my hand. The woods beyond the lot looked empty. My headlights lit up the edge of the trail and the first row of trees. Nothing moving, no one there. I remember thinking maybe I had finally lost it. Maybe I had seen somebody hanging from a branch and panicked, and maybe the run had been deer. Maybe... And then I saw her. She was standing at the tree line, not floating now, just standing there in that same nightdress, hair hanging around her face, head tilted a little like she was curious about me. She should have been far enough away that I couldn't make out much, but her face looked clear anyway. The eyes were still too wide, and the smile had not left. I threw the car into reverse, and before I could pull away, she was suddenly at my window. I did not see her cross the lot. 1 second she was at the trees, and then she was bent down at the driver's side glass with one hand flat against it. Her skin looked gray in my headlights. Her hair was wet at the ends, clinging to her shoulders, and I could smell something through the vents too, sweet and rotten at the same time, like flowers left too long in standing water. She looked right at me. Then she said through the glass very softly, "You taste better when you're scared." I backed up so fast the tires screamed. I nearly slid into the ditch trying to turn out of that lot. I don't even remember the first couple miles home. I just remember checking the rear view over and over until my eyes hurt. She was never back there. I convinced my dad to go back with me the next day because I wanted to prove to myself that I had just scared myself for no reason and there had to have been a better explanation. But the trail was normal and the parking lot was normal. Nothing hanging in the trees, no white fabric, no footprints I could point to and say, see, look, here. But right by my driver's door, pressed into the dust on the outside of the car, there was a handprint with long fingers and mud packed into the lines of the palm. I never hiked there alone again, and I don't hike near dark at all now. And every once in a while, when I get nervous enough that I can feel my own heartbeat in my throat, I still hear that line in my head like she's right beside me again.
I would be frozen if I saw a woman hanging in the air like that. The buzzing sound is such a strange detail, and it makes the whole thing feel much more threatening for some reason. But I'm still focused on how she was suddenly pressed against the glass. She could move faster than a car without even trying. Hearing her whisper about how you taste better when you're afraid or something like this, oh, I'll remember this forever. And that muddy handprint on the side of the car at the end proves it actually happened. I'm never going out on the trails after sunset again. That's way over line for me.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Something in my house learned how to sound exactly like my mother. My story starts in a picture-perfect family home. It really was the epitome of picturesque. Our house was in a beautiful neighborhood, on a quiet street, perfectly trimmed lawns, large shady trees, and a friendly dog bark or two to break up the children's happy laughter. It was the kind of environment any parent dreams of raising their children in. Nothing about this unassuming house, in this unassuming neighborhood, would have made you think haunted, or ghosts, or anything under the umbrella of that nature. And at first, I wouldn't have thought so either. But after living there for only 2 years, I couldn't be so sure anymore. It started just as any other normal evening would have gone. I was in my room, probably playing with my toys or reading a book, when I heard my mother call for me. Her calling my name wouldn't have raised any flags for me, but her tone kind of did. I remember it being sharp and thinking back quickly to remember if I had done anything to be in trouble for. But nonetheless, I thought better of it than to keep her waiting, so I answered her. And when she didn't say anything, I got up from what I was doing, and I stepped into the hallway and looked into the kitchen, from where the call had come from, expecting to see her there, maybe with her hands on her hips like she'd do when she was angry, but she wasn't there. In fact, no one was. It was empty, completely still and quiet. While my mind fought to process and catch up to what was happening and provide me with a logical explanation, I heard her voice again, calling out for me just as she had the first time, but this time her call came from the basement, and her tone had changed. This one was soft and sweet. "Honey, come down to the basement." Immediately, the soft and sweet tone in my ears turned to suspicion, because my mother didn't call me honey ever. She had a nickname for me that she always used, for as long as I can remember, and she almost never called me anything else. One thing's for sure, it wasn't honey. And I remember in that moment thinking about how strange that was, but I was 10, and when your mother calls you, you answer. So I walked to the basement door, turned the knob, looked down, and started down those steep steps. Even now, I can remember how cold it felt down there. A basement in any home will feel weird, stuffy and heavy, like the walls are closing in on you from the sides, and the weight of the home is crushing you from above. Nothing ever feels the same in the basement. Even the sound doesn't move around the same. I walked around the length of the area. I checked the guest room, the bathroom, the storage area. Nothing. No footsteps, no sound, no Mom. There was only one other place left for me to check. The back utility room. The pitch black room that held water heaters and pipes, cobwebs, and was almost guaranteed to be haunted by a ghost or two. And my parents had only one strict rule about the utility room: do not go in there. I stood outside the door, knowing that it was the only room left for me to check for my mom. But I had this feeling, like if I opened it, something would be waiting for me, and it wouldn't be her. So I decided against it. I'll tell her that I couldn't find her, that I went down there and didn't see her, and I followed her rule of not checking the creepy utility room, and so really I couldn't get into trouble for that. And as I turned to leave, the doorknob moved. Slowly, one way and then to the next, as if something on the other side were testing it. I froze, my eyes glued to it. And then I heard breathing. And if I hadn't been holding my own breath, I would have thought that it was mine, but this was heavy and wet. And then a voice. But it wasn't my mother anymore. And it seemed to come from every angle and all at once, and it was loud, and it growled, "I said, come downstairs." I can still hear it. This voice wasn't human. It was one voice, but several all at once. Impossible for one person to imitate, and it was angry and deep. I ran. I ran so fast that I don't even remember my feet touching the stairs in order to propel me up, but I basically flew up to my parents' room, ripped open the door, and there she was. My mom. Sitting calmly on her bed, watching a movie, completely oblivious to what I had just experienced. She looked at me, startled, and asked what was wrong, and I found myself not being able to explain it. Because how do you tell someone, especially your mother, that something was just pretending to be her, and whatever it was, tried to lure me into the dark? About a week later, it got worse. It was around midnight, and I was almost asleep, and I heard my dad's voice from my parents' room across the hall. I heard him call my name, and then he said, "Go to sleep," which confused me, because although I wasn't asleep, I'd been in my bed for hours, and so there was no reason for him to know or even think that I was still awake. I got up quietly and cracked my door open to see if anything was wrong, and that's when I saw him. Sitting straight up in bed, completely rigid. And he was staring at the foot of the bed, tracking something with his eyes like something was moving across the room. And then I heard him say it again, calm this time, but obviously uneasy. "Hey, I told you to go to sleep now." He was talking to me, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at something else. Something walking toward the doorway, toward my room. And then our eyes met. And I will never forget the look on his face. Terror. Not confusion, not annoyance, pure fear. He jumped out of bed, ran to me, grabbed me, dragged me into their room, and woke up my mom. And through his shaking, proceeded to tell us what he'd just seen. He had woken up to a little girl standing at the edge of his bed, silent and staring. She had long brown hair and was wearing a white nightgown. For a second, he thought he was dreaming, until she started moving, walking slowly toward the door, toward me and my bedroom. And as she reached the doorway, he saw the real me standing there. He chanced a glance back at what was just there, but she had vanished. Gone. But what never left after that night was the uneasiness that had now settled itself over the home and our lives.
I'm stuck on that detail about the nickname. Knowing your own mother's voice so well that you notice one little mistake is a life-saving instinct. It felt like something was trying to lure her down into the dark by pretending to be her safe person or something. Then the dad sitting there lay, staring at nothing but clearly seeing a figure moving towards her room, but a parent appearing that scared is what hits you the hardest. They're supposed to be the one that protects you. So when they're paralyzed with fear, you know things are getting seriously wrong. I'm not turning my lights off while sleeping tonight.
Oh, have you ever been to America's national parks? Yosemite, Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon. These places are incredible, right? Millions of people visit every year. Families, hikers, campers, just people looking to get away from it all and enjoy nature. It sounds peaceful, it sounds safe. But today we're talking about something that's been happening in these parks for a very, very long time. Something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. People are disappearing. And I'm not talking about people who got lost or had an accident. I'm talking about cases that makes absolutely no sense. Kids found miles away in impossible locations. Adults who vanish in seconds while surrounded by friends. Search dogs that can't pick up a single scent. And a government that refuses to explain any of it. This is Missing 411. Yosemite, the Grand Canyon, the Great Smoky Mountains, Crater Lake, Glacier National Park. America's national parks are peaceful, beautiful places where families go hiking, camping, and enjoying nature at its finest. But something strange has been happening in these places. Quietly, persistently, people are disappearing. And of course, going missing in the wilderness isn't unusual, right? People get lost. Animal attacks happen. Accidents occur. But the disappearances I'm about to tell you cannot be explained by any of those things. And there's one man who has been tracking them for over a decade, David Paulides. He spent 20 years in law enforcement, working SWAT, street crimes, and detective assignments with the San Jose Police Department in California. Bigfoot. He wrote 2 books on the subject and founded North America Bigfoot Search. Some might dismiss him for this, but others see it differently. Here was a trained investigator who wasn't afraid to look into phenomena that mainstream science ignored. And then in 2011, something changed. Paulides was doing research in a national park when 2 park rangers approached him separately. They knew his background. They knew he could investigate. And they told him something disturbing. People were vanishing from the parks under strange circumstances, and nobody was looking into it. So Paulides started digging. He reviewed over 5,000 cases and identified roughly 1,200 that couldn't be explained by animal attacks, voluntary disappearances, or mental health crises. What he found was disturbing. January 2019, North Carolina. A 3-year-old boy named Casey Hathaway vanished. He was playing in his grandmother's yard when he simply disappeared. There was no one around who could kidnap a child. He was just gone. The local police launched a massive search, tracking dogs, helicopters with thermal cameras, teams combing through the woods again and again. But they found nothing. And then the weather turned. Strong winds, heavy rain, temperatures dropped below freezing. It was so dangerous that the sheriff pulled back the search teams. The helicopters couldn't fly. Could a 3-year-old survive in those conditions? Everyone expected the worst. 56 hours passed. Then Casey was found, about half a mile from his home, in the very area that search teams had searched more than 20 times. The same area his own family had walked through countless times during those desperate hours. But the truly remarkable thing was his condition. The sheriff said Casey was fine, remarkably so. After 56 hours exposed to freezing temperatures, the boy showed no signs of hypothermia. How was that even possible? When they asked him where he had been, Casey said something strange. "Bear took care of me." And people laughed. They assumed it was a child's imagination. And there's a reasonable explanation. Casey's favorite show was Masha and the Bear, a cartoon about a girl in the forest and a protective bear. Besides, the bears in that region were hibernating. But then researchers discovered something very unsettling. This wasn't the first time a child had said something like this. Since the late 1800s, children who returned from unexplained disappearances have described the same thing. A big animal took care of me. Casey wasn't alone. In hundreds of cases investigated by David Paulides, children who returned alive told similar stories. They all spoke of strange beings. There was a logger's daughter who went missing in the forest. Search teams found her by a creek, standing on a log. When they asked what happened, she said, "A big furry wolf had me." But there were no wolves in that area, and wolves don't keep children without harming them. In April 1952, a 2-year-old boy named Keith Parkins disappeared from his family's ranch in Oregon. 19 hours later, searchers found him, 12 miles away. This journey would have required the toddler to cross 2 mountain ranges, navigate fences, creeks, and rivers. 12 miles in 19 hours for a 2-year-old. Survival expert Les Stroud, the host of Survivor Man, attempted to recreate this route for a documentary. Stroud has spent decades teaching people how to survive in the wilderness, but that night he stopped and said, "This is impossible. This child did what I can't do. He didn't do this alone." And there's another thing the survivors have in common. They have no memory. Where they were, how they got there, who they were with. They remember nothing. It's not just children. Adults experience the same thing. They just disappear, and then they just reappear, as if someone took them and brought them back. She was a hunter who used a bow. One day, she was in the forest, sitting quietly, waiting for prey. Then she saw something about 15 meters away, near a tree. She described it this way. It was like something was in my eyes, like looking at something far away through plastic wrap. It reached from one tree to grab another and slowly moved. This lasted about 30 seconds. When she got home, she told her husband what she'd seen. He asked her to wait and put on a movie. The 1987 film Predator, the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger. A scene appeared showing a transparent alien creature moving between trees. She cried out, "Oh my God, that's exactly what I saw." An invisible form with a rippling effect in the air, like some kind of cloaking technology. That's what she had seen in the forest. When David Paulides shared this story, similar reports flooded in. Credible people, military veterans, scientists, park rangers reached out, saying they had experienced the same thing. In 1974, a hunter named Carl Higdon was elk hunting in the Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming. He fired his rifle at an elk, but the bullet left the barrel in slow motion, traveled about 50 feet, and dropped to the ground. And everything went silent. Higdon turned around and saw a figure. Humanoid, but not human. This figure asked him if he was hungry, then handed him 4 pills. Higdon took them. The next thing he remembers, he was inside a transparent, cube-shaped craft. There were elk inside, floating. He was taken somewhere, examined, and then returned to the forest. When rescuers found him hours later, he was in his truck, but the truck was in a location impossible to reach by driving. Higdon was disoriented, he was confused, and he had no memory of how he got there. And here is the strangest part. Higdon had a vasectomy years earlier. He believes the aliens released him because he was not suitable for their purposes. There was another strange pattern. Disappearances occurred disproportionately near rocky areas. People would hear or see something near rocks and then vanish. In Iceland, when building roads, they never blast through certain boulders. They route the road around them. because they believe something lives inside. That sounds like superstition, but Paulides collected dozens of eyewitness accounts of something emerging from rocky areas. Too many to be coincidence. It might not be ghosts, but it's reasonable to wonder, is someone using cloaking technology to abduct people? David Paulides uses a particular expression when describing these cases. It feels like a harvest, as if someone reaches into a line of people, selects one, and plucks them away. It seems random at first, but when you investigate, patterns emerge. Many children who survive these ordeals describe being cared for by large, hairy figures. A bear, a wolf, a hairy man. But bears don't care for human children. Wolves don't keep toddlers warm through freezing nights. What if these children are telling the truth, but we're just not listening? There's a map that's been circulating online. It overlays missing 411 disappearance clusters on top of reported Bigfoot sightings in North America. They match almost perfectly. Coincidence? Maybe, but if there's an undiscovered primate living in North America's wilderness, intelligent, elusive, possibly nocturnal, it would explain a lot. Why tracking dogs can't find a scent, why people vanish in seconds, why some are found in impossible locations, and why others are never found at all. There are ancient warnings about venturing into the forest alone, because something lives there, something old, and something that takes people. They're called the Fae, the fair folk, the good neighbors. You might know them as fairies. But these aren't the tiny, winged creatures from children's stories. In old legends, the Fae were powerful, dangerous, and deeply alien. They lived underground or in hidden realms, and they had a habit of taking humans, especially children. Those who returned often had no memory of where they'd been. Time moved differently in their realm. A few hours in our world might be years in theirs, or vice versa. Which sounds familiar, right? Survivors of missing 411 cases describe similar experiences. What if these old stories weren't myths? What if they were warnings? Some survivors describe something called the Oz effect. They're walking through the forest when suddenly everything changes. The birds stop singing, the wind stops blowing, and a natural silence falls over everything. And then things get strange. The trail they were on is gone. The trees look different. They're somewhere else, but they don't remember moving. Some describe entering a meadow that wasn't on any map. Others see figures in the trees watching them. A few have witnessed their companions suddenly turn and sprint into the forest at full speed for no reason and vanish. It's as if they stepped through an invisible doorway into somewhere else. Theoretical physicists talk about the possibility of parallel dimensions, realities layered on top of ours, invisible but present. What if, in certain places, the barrier between worlds is thin? What if people are accidentally or deliberately slipping through? And what if whatever lives on the other side?
Think about how a toddler could stay alive in those freezing temperatures for days. It doesn't add up. Most adults wouldn't make it through a single night in those conditions. The boy mentioned some bear kept him safe. And this is the part that sticks with me. There's no way a wild animal would babysit some human child like that. Then she talks about that hunter who saw his bullet move in slow motion. That's a whole other level of bizarre. Everything feels off, as if the woods aren't what we think they are. I'm checking over my shoulders out in the trees. And that's it for today. If you liked this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and maybe comment down below which story was your favorite. I'm going to leave you to watch the next video, which is right here, and have a nice day. Goodbye.